Hello, today is a pretty exciting one because The War Within. I've been playing the alpha for a few days, Matt has been playing the alpha for a few days, we've put all of our thoughts together, so today it is time to talk about impressions of The War Within so far, based on some actual gameplay. Tomorrow, we've got a big video coming on a bunch of just pretty damn cool features, lesser known things, and I've got an interview with Holly dropping on Friday. All pretty cool, but let's just get straight into things with the opening. So, the alpha plops you straight into Khaz Algar, which is, well, into the Isle of Dorne, which basically is the first zone. It's the above ocean, like, overall island, with the other zones being underneath it. And it's clearly after stuff has went down. It really seems that Xal'atath has just handed our asses to us big time. A notable character may in fact be dead. I'm kind of holding out hope that it's a fake out, but I actually think even if that character is dead, I think that actually could work for the narrative quite well. Of course, given cinematics, cutscenes, all of that flair, I think that this stuff could be pretty great. Now, at the very least, right, it does not look like a sleepy open. It seems that the expansion is getting properly right into it. The quests, of course, are all standard fare, right? That's fine to me, but what I wanted to see was an improvement in the fantasy, the tone, the feeling, right? What are they actually achieving via those quests? So, the question is, does it feel like Dragonflight? Because Dragonflight was technically a really good expansion, but it felt seasoned strangely, right? Like, if it was meant to be salt and pepper, they accidentally swapped the salt for sugar, and it didn't taste quite right. So, with a weird food analogy done, how does it feel? Well, obvious caveat first, getting a full handle on questing is hard here. Like, we know a few beats from the first zone, essentially. There's no music, the vast majority of VO is not there. I will say, what I said, I liked. I'm not going to talk about spoilers, but I do get Start of Legion vibes in that shit goes down. You're immediately beset by Nerubians, and the Nerubians are constantly going after you through the zone's story, right? So we secure our position, right? You meet plenty of heroes you'll know. You meet the Earthen, and very soon, you're continually getting messed with, right? People die. The threatening force actually succeeds in their goal a fair few times. So the combination of Xal'atath and the Nerubians so far is immediately working really well. And the opening impression for me is that of a sharp-ish departure from Dragonflight, or at the very least that they want to be more clear with threat. Now, to touch the other zones, we haven't played them, but the Arathi are in an overt, like, life and death struggle over the Nerubians. It also seems the Arathi being there is kind of a surprise to everybody. They've also got some internal divisions, and looking at them, they do feel very core Warcraft, right? That's one of the things I really, going into this, wanted to know, would it feel like core Warcraft? Thus far, it's definitely more on track, so that's good. Now, that's not to say that it's one note. There are plenty of nice character moments. I think some side quests that are covering, like, good thematic ground. They're maybe a little bit too quick for my liking, but basically pretty good stuff. It's too early to tell for the overall thing, but really what matters to me is follow-up. I mean, as an example, when I tested Dragonflight, we went straight into a massive fight between the Kirin Tor and the Primalists, only for that to just kind of fizzle out, and for the expansion to feel like it was lacking that solid through line as expressed by the boots on the ground narrative. Now look, they could obviously cock it up, and somehow the later zones could be terrible. I don't really get that vibe so far, though, and if the Nerubians at the start are anything to go by, then certainly by the time we get to Azj-Kahet, I think some pretty real shit will be going down. Really, my core worry was, like, would this feel like Warcraft? Would this be more of the sort of overly saccharine, pulling its punches Dragonflight stuff? Thus far, no, which I'm really, really happy about. So, let's talk then about the Isle of Dorne. One thing you'll notice as you look through the gameplay footage is it does look pretty sparse. Now, they did tell us that it would look like that. It's basically missing clutter, creatures, and a lot of those, so yeah, it did feel sparse. I'll say that the art direction so far I have quite liked. There is a cleanliness to the line work on the new Earthen kit. Certainly there are things with the Earthen that, like, they just remind me a little bit of some Warhammer Dwarf things. I just think, like, their industry is all very cool. cool. I'm seeing some of the vehicles, like the mech-like stuff that they can use. That's really cool. And even just looking at the basics, like the bridges, the gates, their buildings. I mean, one of the taverns basically looks exactly like the one in the Dunmoreau starting zone. But of course, lovely, modern, and earthen. So all of that was quite nice. Now, listening to what devs were saying, it seems that everyone is chomping at the bit to get us to Hallowfall and Azj-Kahet, the latter especially. And a really nice thing is they talked about Azj-Kahet literally as being akin to Suramar. So that's to say that, well, these Nerubians, they're not just creepy, horrible, gnarly spiders, they are actually a very old race that have existed in Azeroth for a very long time. And this is essentially them, like, yes, isolated, but also at quite a height of their power. Now, some of the footage that we were able to see, I don't think that we're able to share in this video, though. You can definitely see that in what they were showing off of Azj-Kahet. So, as a zone, that is certainly getting quite interesting to me. Looks pretty good. The next thing to talk about then is delves. Okay, so to catch you up, delves basically are a bit of a single-player dungeon, but they're done like seamlessly through the world, and they eventually, right, will be hard enough to get us heroic level gear, and they'll be able to fill up a world content slice of the Great Vault. So, fairly interesting system. We've only got a small look at them, but there's definitely a lot to say. So they do feel like a smooth extension of the world. You basically walk up to a mist door and you enter it. There's no loading screen or anything. Definitely, to me, it reminds me of like walking through a mist door in Dark Souls. No loading screen. It feels slick. It definitely just quite modern. So I think that is fundamentally pretty damn cool. Now, we've seen a small number of delves, like 2, and only at tier 1 and 2. And on both tier 1 and 2, they honestly are complete brain-off cakewalks. But that's because tier 1 and 2 are intended for leveling. Now, tier 2 does boost enemy health and damage by 25%. If that was just 25% per tier, and since was able to find out that there are at least currently 10 tiers of these, then it would be maxing out at a 225% multiplier on the power of enemies. Again, that would be at the level 80 scaling. So that should be plenty of challenge, but at the end of the day, for me, it's not just about numerical. As you go up the tiers, they add in more layers of like puzzles and traps. So far, I only saw a simple thing, which was like Nerubian webs, and you slow if you stand in them and they spawn spiders. But it does seem that there are essentially layers of trap-like mechanics and like world interactivity that can be put on top of the base delve at a higher tier. But again, this is something that's going to need extensive endgame testing. Now, going into these, you get Bran. Bran comes in DPS and healing configurations. He's got VO that he spouts out when you're there. He'll call out any points of interest, sometimes loot, he'll fight for you, and he has an XP bar, so you will be able to level him up, make him more powerful. Another thing is treasures, right? So you will find treasures as you go through, and those treasures are a little bit like Torghast powers, which I very much like. I think that ideally, if a tier 10 delve can be properly challenging, but with there being enough room that just like in any good roguelite game, you can get just that little bit of good luck to just make you feel OP, then I think that would be quite a nice balance to strike. Now, you might be thinking, why are you describing what a delve is? Why are you talking around it? Why are you not saying, like, does it blow or not? And basically that's because I enjoy these well enough for a quick jaunt and leveling, but at leveling difficulty, you just don't get that much of a sense of the overall gameplay, right? So if you like doing open world map metas and that sort of thing, you'll probably be fine with these basic leveling ones. But for me, the higher tiers will be make or break. And that is where they have a serious challenge, and it's a challenge we've ran into before with Torghast. And it is essentially this: unavoidable damage. Unavoidable damage can be a big problem in games. It makes the high-end expression of your skill more about crowd control and sort of like that tanking gameplay, kiting and that sort of thing, rather more than like a lot of the positional gameplay and interrupting, right? There's a lot of very hard games that you can complete taking 0 damage, like, I don't know if you're playing in like Dante Must Die and Devil May Cry. But funnily enough, part of this is why I liked Plunderstorm's combat model, because so much of it is skill shots, that your own ability to move, to predict things, it does actually matter. So, if a maxed out delve ends up being just GG, the unavoidable damage is massively scaled up, and you'll just have to survive that, and everything is a big health sponge, then I could see that being a drag, especially if you're playing solo. But if the scaling is instead focusing on the lethality of enemy skill shots and that sort of thing, then I think we could be cooking. But versus Torghast, there is one really good thing, and that is no timer. Because like with Mythic Plus and Torghast, the difficulty model ran into a bit of a problem, where on one hand, unavoidable damage punishes large pulls, but the timer, well, that incentivizes large pulls, and striking the balance there to get the optimal result, to some people that's really fun gameplay, to a lot of others though, it's just stressful and annoying. If they tune this feature right, I think they could avoid that problem. So overall where I'm left, having I suppose dipped my toes in Delves, is I am a little bit excited. I'm cautiously excited though. It's also very clear to me that the development team are also cautiously optimistic in this one. They've continually said that they really want feedback for this, right? Especially on the topic of difficulty. So look, as somebody who definitely identifies with playing lots of video games, I usually try to play them in like the harder difficulty. The leveling delves, like, they can initially underwhelm. If endgame doesn't do that, then I think we could be cooking, but again, the dose makes the poison when it comes to balancing there. But what I do know is there are so many times that I would love to hop on an alt, and if I had something like, say, Horrific Visions that I could gear a character up on, then that would be really nice. So if the decent amount of difficulty, if that's something that I can just reliably do on an alt, I do think that this will be a successful system. I mean, the thing that I've loved about Plunderstorm is I can, remember, like, I'm going for wins and kills in Plunderstorm, so it is pretty cognitively engaging, but it's fast, it's simple, and I can get straight in quickly. If Delves can essentially work for that play pattern, where I can just kind of immediately go do one, have a good time, maybe knock out one in my lunch break, that would be really, really nice. And if that's hard enough that I can properly learn how to play like a new spec or a new class, try out hero talents against content that actually matters, then we could be good. But again, testing. Warbands then. Okay, Warbands will grow. I mean, per Ian, the Warbands are basically only a foundation. Right now, they're very clearly just about things being account-wide, right? It's just very much trying to make things like easier, smoother from a player experience perspective. Just little touches like, looting Warbound gear that you can just send to an alt, that feels great. Filtering out quests that you've already done on your Warband, that's a fantastic quality of life feature. I mean, how many times do you log into Valdrakken on an alt and it's just quests everywhere and it's kind of annoying? So that's really good. I'm certainly more excited about the future, though, with how the developers have been talking about it. I mean, they're essentially insinuating that it will be a lot more than just a quality of life feature eventually, and that it is a foundation of how they are building a mostly account-wide progress World of Warcraft going forward. The next thing to talk about then is hero talents, and shockingly, within a few days, I've not tested literally everything. Look, what is good though is how testable they are, and this is where they've done a cool thing with the alpha. So normally you get a talent point every level. This time round though, they actually give you the option to be leveled to 71 and then given all of your hero talent points, with them then scaling down your damage to compensate for the extra power. Now what this essentially does though, is it lets you begin pseudo-maxed out hero talent testing immediately. Now if the alpha was to say last 6 weeks, with us only getting like level 80 pre-made characters in the beta, right? Well, being able to essentially fully test hero talents now, that gives them like 6 more weeks of impactful hero talent testing, which I think is definitely a smart move. And it does bring me on to testing in general, so the way they're doing it is 1 zone per week, right? With all classes and hero talents, I believe. Basically, that just gives them more focused data, and once they're done with all of those zones, then true to, I suppose, the proper definition of a beta, it will be an end-to-end experience, including max level. Another thing that is actually kind of exciting is PvP. They confirmed that solo queue RBGs are the new standard format, which is great. And with that being the new standard format, they're adding a new battleground, right? What's good is they very much said that this is only the beginning. And essentially, it seems to me that they see battleground content, including sort of rated battleground content, as just being more broad appeal than arenas are. I mean, Ian pretty much says that in an upcoming video that they're doing, so that is definitely good to me. I think Battlegrounds are really fun, and the way that you are also able to focus on an objective and that like broader scale positional play, that means that even though there is the capacity for very sweaty duels, well, there's more to it than just that. I think that is a far more broad system, and if I can gear up a character doing that sort of thing, when by the way, I'm just getting Conquest gear and buying whatever I want in a vendor, that actually seems like a good experience. So, to kind of wrap up vibes, Dragonflight kinda left me just shouting, "Where is the sauce?" I don't really know what the sauce is, but, you know, for lack of a better word, right? Like, the sauce, the Warcraft, the zestiness. I mean, at the top of the video I said it was like it was supposed to be seasoned with salt and pepper, but instead of salt, they accidentally used sugar, right? That is where I think Dragonflight was, like, technically good, but it just didn't work out. Like, it just didn't feel like what I really want to feel from Warcraft. What I'd say is I'm feeling a lot more of that. I mean, the glimpses that I've had into Hallowfall and Azj-Kahet, those, like, man, those look terrific. What they've shown of some of the dungeons, that stuff looks terrific as well. And just in a way where it feels peak Warcraft, where if you told, say, younger you who was playing Wrath of the Lich King what was going on, you showed them Hallowfall, you show them these Arathi human paladins, if you showed young me what is currently in the collections tab over on the alpha, I would be really excited. And then there are some bigger scale lore things, so this isn't necessarily a spoiler, but we do learn a little bit more background about the fall of Koresh. Koresh was the homeworld of the Ethereals, and what we learn is it had a world soul. That world soul began to sort of sing, to be radiant, much like Azeroth is right now, and very shortly after, that world fell to Dimensius, who Xal'atath is the harbinger of. We did a big chunky lore video on the whole story of Xal'atath. It's like half an hour long, so definitely check that out after this. So that we've found out that little bit of lore, I think is really cool. And looking into our first raid, we see a Void Ethereal. Of course, Locust Walker is playing a role with Illyria as well. And while it's not quite Argus, the idea of maybe jumping to Koresh as a patch zone, that would be really cool. It would certainly, like, set up the stakes for Midnight. Not by telling, but very much by showing a world that has been totally screwed. Now, when I was interviewing Holly, and again, I should have that up by Friday, she did speak to Dragonflight's weaker points in the middle, with the patch content not always feeling like super connected. Like, she was keenly aware that 10.2.5 didn't have staying power as compared to other ones. I got the feeling that they are trying to learn and improve earnestly. Again, Dragonflight is a collection of game systems and mechanics, was terrific. It didn't feel like Warcraft, and that's what let me down. This stuff, though, I mean, both me and Matt, within like 15, 20, 30 minutes of just seeing what was going on in the Isle of Dorne quest, thought, okay, there is actually threat here. There are some Legion vibes in this questing. And obviously in Xal'atath, we have a villain that is actually well established, actually popular. When you look at the larger threat of Dimensius, like, yeah, he's not really a dude we've spent a lot of time with, but we learn about him through Xal'atath, Illyria, Locust Walker, all established characters, stuff that can be done at a more reasonable pace. When the last Titan stuff happens, well, we've built up those Titan characters. We've built up Iridikron. You know, it does seem that we're just on an actual path here. So overall, I would say that I certainly like what I see. Don't pre-order based on that. I am cautiously optimistic, and for me, I trust that the raids will be good. I trust the dungeons will be good. My number one point of concern is that delves are able to be hard enough so that players who actually want a sort of single player like challenge, of course delves you can, I believe, do with a party of up to 3 people in total, with no role restriction. But I just want to be able to have faith that those can offer actual engaging gameplay instead of just being a big sleep fest. If they're able to achieve that, we're in a really good position. So, that is it for today's video. Of course, a big thanks to today's sponsor who helped pay for things like the microphone that I'm now getting that is better than the one we were using. That is replacing one that I donated to the City of London because I was too busy talking to Holly after the interview to put my microphone in my bag. Anyway, we've got a video coming out tomorrow, which will be pretty damn hype, going through all the lesser known features and that sort of thing. If you want something to watch immediately though, definitely check out our Xal'atath lore video after watching that, you will certainly understand and I think appreciate more stuff with The War Within. That's it from me. It's alpha time. It's pretty exciting, so I hope you have fun with it, and I'll see you next time.